Alright, I'm at Krugman's blog right now, and this is another one of his posts where he bashes gold, gold standard, etc. And this was printed about 2 years ago. And he does not like the gold standard. Many people don't like the gold standard because there were swings in the business cycle, right? You had one boom after bust cycle. And my problem with how gold standard was instituted, or how it was instituted, was they did not address the problem of fractional reserve lending. If they addressed the issue of fractional reserve lending, the gold standard would be excellent. And I've shown in videos how the Achilles heel of the gold standard was fractional reserve lending. And we could talk about that another time. I've gone that over many times. But the problem with Krugman, Mike Norman, all these guys, is that they look at the gold standard from a Western point of view perspective. They don't look at it from what damage has fiat money done to these now second and third world countries. And once again, my problems with fiat money: number one, it takes two incomes to raise a family. That's number one problem. Two, if you look at the wars that have taken place in the 20th and now you could say 21st century, it's due to fiat money. We would have had wars that lasted a lesser period of time, and we wouldn't have many millions of people dying, especially in World War I, World War II. And I've examined that problem as well. And this is what Krugman and all these guys tend to ignore. And we don't need to look at that. We could look at it from another perspective. We could look at it from a third world perspective. Let's look at one country like Argentina right now. Alright, let's look at the economic history of Argentina. This is at Wikipedia, and let's just read a little bit about this. I actually learned about Argentina, how it was an affluent country in the 1900s, right? It was one of the richest countries out there. Let's just read a little bit about this. The economic history of Argentina is one of the most studied owing to the Argentine paradox, its unique condition as a country which had achieved advanced development in the early 20th century but experienced a reversal which inspired a wealth of literature and analysis on the causes of this decline. Between 1860 and 1930, exploitation of the rich land of the Pampas strongly pushed economic growth. During the first 3 decades of the 20th century, Argentina outgrew Canada and Australia in population, total income per capita income. By 1913, Argentina was the world's 10th wealthiest nation per capita. What's missing from this here is that they didn't talk about how the gold standard probably made them live within their means. And you could look at this over here. Beginning in the 1930s, however, the Argentine economy deteriorated notably. The single most important factor in this decline has been political instability since 1930, when a military junta took over, ending 7 decades of civilian constitutional government. In macroeconomic terms, Argentina was one of the most stable and conservative countries until the Great Depression, after which it turned into one of the most unstable. So let's get this straight. This was a conservative nation, and then when the globalists took over Argentina, and when they got off the gold standard, that's when they started to decay as a country. And we could look at this a little further. And now, what these individuals who bash the gold standard, right, they will never mention this to you in regards to a country like Argentina. But let's look at this. Argentina abandoned the gold standard in December 1929, earlier than most countries. For much of the previous period, the country had operated a currency board. Okay, never mind. So let's get this straight. In 1929, close to 85 years ago, they were running on the gold standard. Then they got off right after all these economies crashed. And we could get into what caused the Great Depression and all that stuff. People blame the gold standard, and yes, you could blame it, but how it was implemented was the problem. And the Federal Reserve created all these excesses within the economy as well. But if you want to look at what Argentina is right now, we could look at it through some of these statistics. Okay, so let's look at a few factors here, or a few statistics. I'm at the CIA World Factbook, and we're looking at Argentina right now. And these are just some statistics from the past few years. If you want to look at GDP per capita in comparison to the rest of the world, 75th, right? So remember this. We could look at all these statistics, right? And at the end of the day, they were in the top 10. And now they're 75th when it comes to GDP per capita, GDP real growth, like 95, but that doesn't really tell you that much. Maybe purchasing power parity, I think that's alright. 23, so that's pretty good. Let's look at this though. Gross national savings, 51. If you look at some of these other statistics, industrial production growth rate, 112, not great. Unemployment rate, 82, not good as well. I mean, the United States has a bad, how should I say it, bad unemployment figure as well. Public debt, 80. Inflation rate, yeah. How has inflation looked in these third world countries, especially getting off the gold standard? They're 218, right? And that's assuming that these numbers are correct. You have to remember that when it comes to inflation rates, especially in countries like Argentina, if you have someone like John Williams, he would be arrested, right? Regardless of whether you agree with him or not, he would be arrested for saying that they're cooking the books, which they are. All countries cook the books. That's a fact. So this is not good, 218. So one of the consequences of getting off the gold standard, would Argentina continue to destroy their middle class by having that high of an inflation rate? I mean, it's bad here in the United States, but it's much worse in third world countries. So whenever you hear these guys bashing gold and all that, they're doing it from an American-centric perspective, like Paul Krugman, right? They're not looking at third world countries. Because, yeah, they live in the United States, they went to an Ivy League school, so they're not going to look at that. They're not going to talk about that. So, once again, these individuals are not going to talk about Weimar, Argentina, and all that. They're going to keep quiet about that. They're always going to talk about the instability of the gold standard, the 1800s. And the problem was fractional reserve lending. If you fix that and have a simple banking system, then guess what? Our economy would flourish. I mean, sure, we probably wouldn't have some of the firms that are in existence today, but at the same time, you would have more stability and less pain for the middle class. And maybe you would have more of an agriculture-based economy, which we would benefit off of, rather than having these companies like Monsanto and all that stuff. And I could get into Monsanto another day, but I'm sure a lot of people don't like Monsanto and all those agriculture-based companies that have consolidated all this power through big government. Pushing that aside, if you want to look at it, there are a lot of gold standard haters, but they will not mention the flaws of fiat money when it comes to Argentina, Weimar, and all that stuff. I mean, you could look at what happened with the wars. These guys won't talk about it, or will brush it off to the side. So these are my thoughts, guys. Thanks for listening, and just want to say I have a little more time this weekend, and that's why I'm doing these videos. And maybe I'll come up with an interview or two. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.